Welcome to part 3 of my research in relation to the Satanic Temple United Kingdom, and please verify and corroborate the information. We were looking at the London Law Agency because the Death Penalty Limited, that Keir Starmer was a previous director that resigned at a key time in April 2020, tying in with a lot of information and important stuff, was started with the London Law Agency. So it's a criminal, fraudulent company. That means our Prime Minister was linked to fraud. He was also obviously the Director of Public Prosecution, so he would know about the criminal fraudery through the Company's House records, and he does know because I've sent the evidence to his email address, his MP's email address. So here's the London Law Agency, and it's currently, since I've exposed it, in liquidation. So they're closing the company because they know they're fully exposed, and it was incorporated in 1967. A year after the Satanic Church that we're going to come to in a minute. Now, it's a solicitor's firm, so they will know exactly what they're part of, this fraudery. And that's because on the incorporation document, the actual name on the incorporation document is Ganvalon Motors. And below it, you'll see Jordan's and Sons. So Ganvalon Motors has never been registered on the record. It's only got the London Law Agency. And Jordan's and Sons Limited is a criminal fraudulent entity company that's now trading as Vistra, that was created in 1965. So we have Jordan's and Sons, 1965 creation, and the London Law Agency created in 1967, the most important companies in the fraud. And I'm showing this again because it all becomes relevant, and so it's all on the same document. The Church of Satan was founded in 1966, right in between those two documents, those two companies. And it was founded in San Francisco, and it was considered the oldest satanic religion in continual existence, and more importantly, the most influential, inspiring numerous limitator and breakaway groups. According to the church, Satanism has been codified as a religion and philosophy by Lavie, its founder, and his church, founded in an era which there was when there was much public interest in occult, witchcraft, and Satanism. Okay, so we have to consider that black magic is being used against the public. You know, I can't believe I'm quite saying this, but we really do now have to believe that it's being used as part of the mind control against the masses. And they could be using other covers of the deception when really witchcraft is part of it. We can't not consider that now with everything going on. Reading on, it says the church enjoyed a heyday for several years after its founding celebrities attended Lavie's satanic parties and he was invited on talk shows. The Satanic Bible sold nearly 5 million copies. A million copies. Satanic parties. Okay, now, Douglas Dougie Smith has been the special advisor for the last few prime ministers in the United Kingdom. He started up fever sex parties, according to the research. Were they satanic parties? Because the evidence also suggests that Douglas Dougie Smith's practices the dark arts, according to Nadine Dorries. And the research shows he's been arrested for threats to kill. Now, he's Scottish, and I suspect he is a high-level Freemason, probably along with John Fleming and Gerald McCann, we're going to come to a bit later. Remember, Edinburgh is where the oldest acting Freemason lodge is based in the world, the oldest one in the world. Reading on about the Church of Satan, Lavie was the church's highest priest until his death in 1997, 4 years before the World Trade Center disaster. And then in 2001, Peter H. Gilmore was appointed the position of high priest. It's the same year as the World Trade Center disaster. And then the church's headquarters were moved to Hell's Kitchen, Manhattan in New York City. According to somebody else that's done research, Larry Silverstein located one of his premises, I can't remember what it is, in Hell's Kitchen after the World Trade Center disaster. And yes, in case you're wondering, Gordon Ramsay is linked to the fraud, and there will be no coincidence in his shows being called Hell's Kitchen. So what's the symbol of the Church of Satan? Well, it's the Baphomet, or the sigil of the Baphomet, a goat's head with an inverted pentagram. Remember, we've already seen an inverted, what appears to be a picture of a Baphomet in the portrait of King Charles, released on the date, the 14th of May 2024, the same day that I released the evidence of the threat to directed energy linking into the Prince and Princess of Wales company that we have been looking at, which ties in with all of this that we're now talking about here. So the Baphomet is a figure incorporated across various cult and Western esoteric traditions during Charles starting in 1307. Then that becomes relevant in the relation to the evidence of Sacha Stone, and we're going to come to that in a minute. 1307. The Knights Templar were accused of hearsay for worshipping Baphomet as a demonic idol. Baphomet subsequently resurfaced during the 19th century, speculation and debate regarding the suppression of the Templars, with various occult and mystical traditions claiming Baphomet as a symbol of balance and synthesis. I'm going to read that in a minute, so I just want to come back to the Knights Templar connection. The evidence suggests that the Freemasons stemmed from the Knights Templar. Okay, so this then ties in with the Freemasons and the Freemason companies, and why we've got so many military, so many police, intelligence services, and government organisations personnel appearing to stay silent in relation to all of this. Reading on, reading from the top a bit there. Baphomet subsequently resurfaced during the 19th century, speculation and debate regarding the suppression of the Templars, with various occult and mystical traditions claiming Baphomet as a symbol of balance and synthesis, originating in teachings of Gnostics, while others maintained Baphomet as a profane deity, or deity? Deity, I always say that wrong. Going back a little bit, so the 19th century, okay, so we're talking 1800s onwards. 1800s at the beginning, I'm going to show other evidence in relation to this. Switzerland became neutral in 1815. 1810, we saw the creation of Waterloos. 1816, we've seen in other evidence that Cater and Allen was created. It's all tying in, okay, coming back to this international collaborative crime and deception against humanity, potentially to remove most of humanity whilst they stay in their tunnel systems in Switzerland and elsewhere. Reading on, it says, since 1856, 12 years after the company's house started, okay, 12 years, it was 1844. Reading on, it says, since 1856, the figure of Baphomet has been associated with the Sabbatic Goat illustration, Eliphas Levi, composed of binary elements representing the symbolization of the equilibrium of opposites, both human and animal, both masculine and feminine, combined in metaphysical unity. Transgenderism ties into this now, and transhumanism being the ultimate goal in this. Okay, the blending of human and animal, masculine, feminine, but also leading to the blending of human and man-made technology. This is where I think either the Neuralink and the mRNAs, etc., are going to link into all of this. So it's against our creator, against natural creation, satanic. And the evidence is now irrefutable in all of this. So this is the Baphomet sigil, the sigil of the Baphomet, according to the research. And you can see some dates here. In the formative years of the Church of Satan, this particular version of the symbol was utilized on membership cards, stationery, medallions, and most notably above the altar in the ritual chamber of the Black House. The complete graphic first appeared publicly on the cover of the Satanic Mass album in 1968, so the year after the London Law Agency was created, and then on the Satanic Bible cover in 1969, the year that the Prince Charles became the Prince of Wales, where Companies House is based, who creates the criminal companies. And it's also the date of the first moon landing involving NASA, one letter short of Satan. I suspect is all made up. I can't believe a thing now that these people are saying. And of course, that enables them to then say asteroids, talk about apocalyptic events to control humanity, and use this satanic fear control over them. Reading on, it says, and first named as Sigil of Baphomet in the Satanic Rituals book of 1972, the year after the World Economic Forum was created. And just to confirm, Charles, so he was made Prince of Wales and Earl of Chester by letters patent on July the 26th, 1958. We're going to come to that in a minute. At the age of 9, and formally invested as Prince of Wales in Wales Castle on July the 1st, 1969. Remember the year we've just said about, 1969, tying in with the Church of Satan and the Baphomet Sigil research. And just to confirm here, the Register of Companies for England and Wales is based at Companies House, Cardiff, where Charles became the Prince of Wales in 1969, and they create the criminal fraudulent entity companies. Louise Smith is the current registrar, and yes, I've researched her and she's linked to the fraud. And I suspect she's related to David Smythe, because I think that's actually pronounced Smythe, and David Smythe was the reason that the Archbishop of Canterbury resigned in 2024 for his involvement in child trafficking or child abuse. However, the Archbishop of Canterbury links into the same companies, linking to the Freemasons and the Rothschilds and the fraud and nuclear weapons companies and all of this other stuff. All very, very quickly. Also links to JP Morgan very, very quickly, and therefore the Flemings. Prior to 1844, this is just talking about Companies House. Companies could only be incorporated through a grant of royal charter. I'm not going to read all of this, but you can see that it's 1801 to 1844. Okay, only approximately 100 companies were incorporated by private act. Now, 1800, remember, I've just been talking about early 1800s and Switzerland becoming neutral, etc. It's all tying in and relevant. This made me laugh, so I had to put this. I actually laughed out loud when I saw this. It was hoped by members of Parliament of the day that a publicly accessible central company register would help to protect the public from fraud. What an inversion. Okay, a satanic inversion. It is the main cause and system of fraud for all of the world's problems. That's a fact now, everybody. This is clear. This is absolutely clear from the evidence. So, here's the Apollo moon landing. Apollo 11 was the spaceflight conducted from July the 16th to 24th of July, 1969. 16th to the 24th. Just over 2 weeks after Charles became the Prince of Wales. And let's look at NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Act of 1958 is the United States federal statute that created the National Aeronautics and, why is it terrible? It's the radiation. Space Administration's NASA, one letter short of Satan, if you rearrange the letters. And by the way, Santa Claus, no surprise. Teach your children how to lie. Tell them later you've been lying to them. Okay, or lie to your children all those years about a fictional character. Then you tell them you've been lying to them and tell them then they can't lie. I mean, it's satanic. A reading on it says the act, which followed close on the heels of the Soviet Union's launch of Sputnik, was drafted by the United States House Select Committee on Astronaut and Space Exploration on July the 29th, 1958. July the 28th, 1958. 3 days after Charles was made Prince of Wales and Earl of Chester by letters patent, July the 26th, 1958. Closer look at NASA. Just confirming, established in 1958. But further down, it states, it has since led most of America's space exploration programs, including Project Mercury, Project Gemini, the 1968 to 1972 Apollo program mission. So 1968, the year after the creation of the London Law Agency, and the year the first graphic for the Baphomet Sigil appeared. Here it is. On the cover of the Satanic Mass album. And in 1972, back to NASA, We remember we've got the two dates, 1968 and 1972. 1972 was the year that the Baphomet, first named as the sigil of Baphomet in the Satanic Rituals book in 1972. So further down, okay, I've done a whole document in relation to these people, but just going to go over this a little bit here now. So these are Jane Evershed at the top, if they're using their real names, David Emery in the middle, and Sasha Stone at the bottom. I know that's not his full real name. And they're collaboratively working together. And I've been directed to this group by multiple people right back at the beginning, okay, all trying to direct me towards this group. Now, Sasha Stone I spoke to on a video call whilst he was in Mexico in the jungle months and months and months ago. Said we'd do an interview remotely. Didn't hear from him. That's next thing I know, he's over in the UK, and I'm being contacted twice by his aide saying, do you want to do an interview in person? Of course, I can't because of the nature of what I'm exposing, so they don't interview me. Now, Sasha Stone has done many interviews remotely, so I suspect had I gone to those, I would have been murdered. And Sasha Stone was born in 1966, the year of the Church of Satan Foundation. Like I said, I've got a whole document coming in relation to this, but just a quick snapshot. He was also involved in the International Tribunal for Natural Justice. Okay, now Michelle Young was involved in that. Michelle Young was sat next to, this is where Gordon Bowden went to, I believe, according to the research, and was trying to give his information and evidence in this organization that was founded by Sasha Stone, with Michelle Young sat next to him. Michelle Young did not tell me she was sat next to him. I was talking to her a lot about this company's house fraud. Not once did she say, by the way, I worked with Gordon Bowden, who was identifying company's house fraud. No, she didn't. She didn't. And you'll see where the research goes. It's absolutely critical evidence that stems from all of this. But this is information I received in relation to Sasha Stone 2 and a bit weeks ago. Sasha Stone's real name is Simon Jean-Paul Sasha Adams. He is the son of Sir Walter Adams, a top official within the British establishment. Sir Walter Adams was one Rockefeller Fellow and member of the Rockefeller Foundation. In addition to this, he was an officer of the Order of the British Empire in 1945, appointed companion of the Order of the St. Michael and St. George in 1952. That's a year, I believe, before the Queen's coronation. It may be on the same year, actually, I can't remember. And knighted in 1970, a year before the World Economic Forum. His son, Simon Jean-Paul Sasha Adams, aka Sasha Stone, is friends with Ciro, forgive me if I'm pronouncing that wrong, Orsini, whom he knows from his previous career as a pop musician. He is registered as one of the board members of Sasha's company, Stone Music Companies Limited. Ciro Orsini is a descendant of the infamous Italian Orsini family and part of the black nobility. He was also present at Westminster Central Hall at the ITNJ convention rectification ceremony. This is very important, this bit. Now, bearing in mind the research that we've done around the Church of Satan, and the Baphomet actually mentions the connection to the Knights Templar in the 13th century. Okay, now remember, that then ties to the Freemasons and the Baphomet and everything that we're seeing going on here, because we have Freemason companies throughout the research. So from about the 13th century, several northern Italian aristocratic families infiltrated by the Khazarians much earlier began to develop into the highest of the ruling satanic elites through the accumulation of vast wealth in the banking and merchant businesses. These ruling elites found their wealth exploding through satanic practices of blood and child sacrifice and began to settle in the areas close to the power center of the Vatican. These wealthy Roman aristocratic families are the main lineages of the black nobility and papal bloodlines, whose ancestors include the house of, and I'm not going to, forgive me, I'm not Italian, I'm not going to try and pronounce them and insult anybody, but at the end I know that the Rothschilds are there, and the Rothschilds feature right throughout the fraud. It's very clear, linking in with JP Morgan and the Archbishop of Canterbury. Now, of course, we have the information of the Pope potentially being the last Pope as well. And it says, remember, I didn't write this. This was information given to me, but the evidence that I acquire from this supports it. Okay, it says their satanic plan is to destroy sovereign nations and cultural identity, in so to lay the groundwork for the one world religion, which is based upon the open acceptance of practicing Satanism by the ruling elite satanic families. The cornerstone of these depraved practices include child sexual abuse, child sexual ritual, human blood sacrifice, blood drinking, and cannibalism. Packaged, and you can actually buy adrenochrome very easily. You can go and research and see how easy that is to buy. They're trying to normalize it already. Packaged as a religion that is desired and promoted by non-human alien entities, assorted lunar forces, and demonic spirits. These most vile planetary controllers carry out abhorrent anti-human agendas. Covered in opulent robes, they publicly profess to be devout men of God, praying for world peace, while behind closed doors, the top echelon is negotiating to incite terrorism, war, and run child trafficking rings to every corner of the globe. So a lot, which is what I'm finding, a lot of the people, Michael P is a good example, saying he's a man of God and then being abusive, insulting, making veiled threats. Okay, this is what I'm finding a lot of the time. They're not men of stature and moral conscience, shall we say, which has been given to us by our Creator to protect us all in a rational state of mind. And the whole system that these people are part of have gone far from that. It's satanic. So we've got a lot of people pretending to be men of God, women of God, when in fact I suspect this is true, and they're actually got the hidden agenda. Now, I know that most of the research I've done around most of the terrorism offences, big ones, the World Trade Center disaster, the bombing in London in 2005 on the buses, the bombing in Israel, the Manchester bombing, all go back to the same companies, linking in with Export Manor Freehold Limited again, and linking back with the Flemings. Okay, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. So I suspect that all of these terrorism acts are all deception, satanic deception, blaming on other groups to cause absolute mayhem and a satanic control over humanity. It's pure evil, isn't it? Now, what I did find, which you'll see in one of the other documents, when I researched Sasha Stone, it goes into some very interesting information. But one part of it goes into Jedi management. Okay, and that company links to Exmoor Manor Freehold Limited, where I was living and where I started acquiring all of the evidence of this fraud. Jedi Management Limited. Now, of course, I'm just giving you the evidence here. I don't know what it means exactly, but Star Wars was created and came out on the year that I was born as well, 1977. Several other things happened around that year. So the Albert Pike document was supposedly removed from the British Museum. The research around MK Ultra links to my dad's adoptive family and the Cray twins who are associated with them. That's via the MK Ultra research, and which is mind control through pharmaceuticals, etc., and subliminal messages and experimentation on humanity. The year I was born, 20,000 documents were declassified in relation to MK Ultra. It's also when according to the research, when the original Stargate project was started in 1977, and that involved Jimmy Carter, the President of the United States from 1977 to 1981, I believe, and he died last year. Okay, I don't suspect that's a coincidence. And that Stargate project was about remote viewing, as I understand it. So I'm coming off the subject a little bit here. So, this is all relevant, what we're talking about. This all ties in, okay? Makes connections back to the Church of Satan, or the Satanic Temple. So here's the Madeleine Fund, leaving no stone unturned. We'll do a little bit more and then we'll stop for the next part. Madeline Fund, leaving no stone unturned, Limited, obviously in relation to Madeleine McCann. And it was incorporated in 2007 in May. And on the incorporation document, Bates, Wells and Braithwaite. So this is the same company linked to the Death Penalty Limited, which links to Keir Starmer, and the same company that is shown on the Prince and Princess of Wales company, which is very important, which has the Monks company, the Ingenious Film Partners 2 LLP, etc., all of the other stuff that we looked at in the other part. Also on here, on the People record, it has BWB Secretarial Limited. If you remember when we looked at the Death Penalty Limited with Keir Starmer on it, that also had BWB Secretarial Limited. So it makes a very clear link to that. So she supposedly went missing, Madeleine McCann, on the 3rd of May 2007. Now that's the year that I bought a flat in Exbourne Manor Freehold Limited, and the year that the company was started. But I didn't become a director on the company until 2009, and I presumed it was a legitimate, legal, lawful company. It was only in well down the line in 2022 that I really started to uncover what was going on. So that was created the same year. Now, Julia Vandal is somebody who has been claiming to be Madeleine McCann, and I've always thought in my mind, with the evidence that I've acquired from that, a little bit we're going to look at in a minute, she's either Madeleine McCann or she's been positioned as part of this fraud. And she was arrested, okay, as the evidence was being exposed, quite substantial evidence. She was just arrested on the 20th of February, or around that time, 20th of February 2025. I do not suspect that is a coincidence at all. Okay, I suspect that that was deliberately part of all of this. Now, the evidence from Julia led to key information. Okay, these are just, I'm not obviously not going to be able to see this fully, but this is just emails that between Julia and I on the Julia document. I've got 2 documents, and what I'll do is I will try and share those actually when I'm producing this evidence or posting this video out. And this is correspondence between Julia and I, and she gave me loads of information, including what her Polish family companies that they worked for, and it linked to Crocodrillo. So that Crocodrillo evidence from Companies House linked almost immediately to Exbourne Manor Freehold Limited. Okay, you can see the very first company, 52 Richmond Hill in Surrey, it says. Well, there's an address in Bournemouth right near Exbourne Manor called Richmond Hill in Bournemouth, okay? And this dissolved on the 2nd of April 2019, the year of the outbreak. And in fact, that's 3 days. Oh, no, it's not. So I'm getting mixed up. So that's the year of the COVID outbreak in Wuhan, supposed. But the evidence from that linked within one company away from, so within the company on the left there, you can see Christopher Jones, okay, who's a consultant linked to 52 Richmond Hill. And then 52 Richmond Hill with that company. You can see it here looking in the company documents or register. Links to Property Management Solutions. That's the same company that we employed at Exbourne Manor Freehold Limited after Owens and Porter resigned. But then they changed the company name. So they used that name initially. Paul Mallory used it. And you can see this person resigned from the company in the 22nd of February 2024. So within 2 companies, bearing in mind there's over 5 million companies, it linked within 2 to Exbourne Manor Freehold Limited from the research of Julia Vandal. Not only that, it then linked to, so this is just showing that it links to Exbourne Manor Freehold Limited via the research very quickly. And this is just showing some of the information because it then linked, I think it was 6 companies away from the Madeleine McCann No Stone Unturned from the research. So either Julia is Madeleine or she's been positioned. Now, I suspect she's been positioned as part of the deception. And there's several reasons. One of the reasons is she started having the belief that she was Madeleine McCann in May 2022. Well, that's the same time that I'm making inquiries with an Exborn Manor. And then there was some visions she told me about, but would not tell the world. Now, she wouldn't discuss what I believe was a collaborative deception to get me with Cornerstone and Neo Anderson, who were the people around the apocalyptic deception. Julia was coming in as part of that deception to get me to go to a location, the Roslin Chapel in Edinburgh, I believe. She was also then trying to get me to believe in an apocalyptic event by what she claimed to be a vision. I suspect because she would not talk about this publicly, it was all part of a trap and deception to entice me into something that wasn't real. That's what I suspect with the evidence. There's a bit more to it. I was also led to somebody else who had exactly the same vision that she had, that Julia had. Okay, and the person that directed me to that other person is a Freemason's wife, according to the information. So I suspect all of this deception was for me to be drawn into certain falsifications, false line of inquiry. That's what I suspect. But certainly she was either Madeleine McCann or positioned. And you can see via the research, where are we going with this? The World Trade Center research that I then did. So World Trade Center companies linked back into Julia very quickly. And you're not going to be able to see it very well on here. So I'll circulate the World Trade Center 2 document as well. But it links back in to the Julia research. So come back, please, for part 4, I believe will be on next. Thank you very much.